If you've ever dreamed of designing book covers either for your own book or as a paid designer for your clients, then this video is for you. I get so many questions about designing book covers in Procreate, questions about CMYK, RGB, DPI, file size, vector versus raster, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to try and answer all of those questions in the simplest way possible so you can actually start designing confidently without having to guess or panic about your files. Now, before we get into the actual tutorial part of this video, I just want to mention one thing. When it comes to designing book covers in Procreate and printing your work from Procreate, there is no one magical setting that's going to work for everyone. Everyone's spec is going to be different, and it will always depend on your printer, your publisher, or even your personal preferences. Like some people might need the spine to be on the left or on the right. That actually depends on the country you live in. Some printer are fine with RGB, some will need CMYK, and some client might want a special printing effect. Therefore, you'll have to send them a vector file. All that kind of stuff will always depend. That's why everyone's gonna have different specs. But don't worry, in this video, I'm going to share with you the simplest way to begin so you are not guessing. So I'm going to answer my most asked questions that I get all of the time. If you're new and you've never designed a book cover before, then this video is for you. Now, if you already know some of the basics, I still think you'll get some value out of this video and it might save you a few headaches. Now, let's get into everything you need to know. Hi everyone, I'm Aurélie. I am a lettering artist / graphic designer, and I have been doing graphic design for a very long time. I started working in an agency back in 2013, and in 2015, I started freelancing, working for myself, creating my own graphic design business, and I've been doing it ever since. So I know a thing or two about designing for clients and creating documents that are sent to print. Now, I started focusing on book covers mostly after I did my lettering style challenge in 2023 when I designed 31 book covers in 31 days. And that's when I started getting a lot of requests. Now I can say I pretty much specialize in book covers. That's, I would say, 90% of the jobs I get at the moment. And I get design requests for book covers, I'd say about once or twice a week, which is pretty insane. So yeah, I definitely know quite a few things about book covers, and I'm going to share everything that I can with you today. Now, make sure you watch until the end of the video if you want to learn how to get into the book cover design industry like I did, because I get this question a lot. So I will cover that in the last section of this video. Now, the first question I always get is, can you design a book cover using Procreate? And the answer is yes, you can. Now, is it the best app out there to do that? Probably not. I would still recommend something like Photoshop and InDesign to set up your files, edit some text. It's just easier. Now, Procreate will create a file that is high resolution. You can work with a document that's a 300 dpi. You can create a CMYK PDF. So yes, you can definitely print that, because at the end of the day, that's how you make a book cover. You print a PDF file that is high resolution. So the answer is yes, and I have designed book covers using solely Procreate in the past, and it works perfectly. And this is what I'm going to teach you in this video. Now, the second question I get is, what size should my book be? And what size of canvas are you using? Which is very funny because it always depends. Like every book is a different size. Like if you go to any bookshop, you'll see that every book is slightly different in height and width. And also the spine is always different and depending on the number of pages. I could give you a standard book cover size, which you can probably find on the internet, but that doesn't mean that the book you're going to design is going to be the same size. So I would just recommend either asking your publisher what the book is going to be. If you're designing for yourself, just pick a size and stick to it. And if you're not sure, just get a random size of any random book, and then you can resize it later. Like I've had in the past cases where the client didn't know the size of the book just yet. So I just created a random standard size, and it's easy to adjust later. It's not ideal, but it's possible. And in the tutorial part of this video, I'll show you exactly how to set up your canvas, how to create it from scratch. But yeah, the size is always going to be different. Now, the next question I often get is, what setting should I use? Again, there is no like specific rule, but I would say just make sure you're working in high resolution. And by that, I mean, make sure you're working at least a 300 DPI. So when you create your canvas, make sure it's not 72 DPI because that's for web. And usually Procreate will automatically, like the default setting would be 72. So make sure you're working at 300 DPI. Make sure you get like a decent size of canvas and you should be fine. Now, regarding the color profile, I would recommend working in CMYK just to be safe. Everything that you're going to print is going to have to be CMYK most of the time. So just work in CMYK, at least you know what you're working with because what you see is what you're going to get on your screen. Whereas if you work in RGB, the colors might not appear the same at the end. Like for example, you might have like a super bright green on your screen and once printed, it's just very dull, very grayish. I had made this mistake when I was just starting out as a graphic designer. I actually sent the proof as a super vibrant purple, like a very like nice purple, and the client wanted that printed. And unless you use like a very specific ink that's a little bit more expensive, you won't get that result. And the client was just like not happy. And I was like, oh, this is all my fault. Like I should have sent a CMYK proof so that the client would know exactly what to expect once printed. So that's my advice. That's the setting you should have. Make sure you work with 300 DPI. Make sure you have the right color profile and you should be good. Now, what about bleeds, you may ask? I would say just add bleeds all the time, just to be safe. Again, it just is an extra 3mm on each side. 3 to 5 is usually the standard. Personally, when I work on a new project, like whatever it is, I just add an extra 3mm on the measurement. Like for example, if my book cover is, I don't know, 15 centimeters in width, I would just add an extra centimeters, the 5mm on the left and 5mm on the right. So I'm working with 16 centimeters and at least you are safe. Basically, the bleed is just an extra safety area that is going to be cut off anyway. If you have a background, for example, and it's black, if your image just stops straight where you need it to be cut, it could be that it moves slightly and it's not going to be cut perfectly. But if you add a bit of extra background, then once it's cut, it's going to look perfect. Just make sure you add an extra bleed. That doesn't cost you anything and at least you're sure. But again, the best is to just ask your printer. They will be able to tell you exactly if they need bleeds or not and what size it should be. Now, this question I get a lot and it is, can you create a vector file in Procreate? And how do you convert to vector if Procreate doesn't make a vector file? And the answer is Procreate does not allow you to work with vectors. So it is all raster based, so pixels, just like Photoshop. And the only way to create a vector file would be using an app like Illustrator or Affinity. You would have to know beforehand. There are cases where the client will want like a special printing. So for example, they might want the heading to be embossed or with a gold foil, and you would have to provide them with a vector file. Now, vector doesn't allow you to have details. So anything with like shadows, highlights, like little textures and elements, that cannot be vector, or it will be very limited. So it's very important that you ask your client first what they need. If they are happy with just a raster file, then go ahead and add all of the shadows and embellishment you want. Now, if they want a vector file, you'll have to provide them with a separate file that is a vector file. Let me know if you would like a tutorial on how to create a vector file, because I don't know, like it just seems so simple to me, but some of you might want a tutorial. I actually designed a book cover this year, which I'll hopefully share with you soon, where it's entirely vector. Like there is no texture, no shadows, no highlight. I provided the client with just a vector file. So I'm super excited to see what it's going to look like. All right, and the last question is, how do you export your file so it's ready for print? And the best is to export a PDF, a high resolution PDF. And you can do that by just clicking export on Procreate. You can also export a JPEG or a TIFF, that works as well. Again, best to ask your printer. They will be able to tell you exactly what they need. Personally, if I am working on a book cover for a client, I like to design my work in Procreate. Then I export the file as a PSD, which I then open with Photoshop. And then in Photoshop, I would convert my file to CMYK. I would do a couple of color adjustments. I'm just so used to Photoshop. I would actually export that file as a TIFF that I then put into InDesign, and then I export a PDF from InDesign, high quality print with the bleeds. So it's a little bit of a complex process, but you don't have to do that if you're just using Procreate. If this is all you have, just export a JPEG, a TIFF, or a PDF file, and you will be totally fine. I know that was a lot of information, so I have prepared for you a little checklist so that you can go back to it and kind of tick off everything, make sure you haven't forgotten anything. But yeah, I hope this was helpful. I know there's a lot of things to know, but if you communicate with your clients or your printer, you should be fine. And if you're still stuck, you still need help, just watch the rest of this video. Hopefully seeing me create a book cover will help you. Alright, so let's jump straight into it. What you're going to need if you don't have the measurement is a book that you're going to reference, and I'm going to use this book and measure it up so that I can redesign the cover for it. You're also going to need a notebook and a pencil to write down your measurements, and a ruler. So depending on what you want to design, you can either measure just the front cover, you can also decide to stick to just a regular hardback or paperback, but if you want, you can also do a desk jacket like this one. This is what I'm going to be doing. First things first, I'm just gonna remove it from the book so I can measure it. So if you're just doing the front cover, I would recommend measuring it up here, and you would be working with something about 15.5 centimeters by 23.5, and you would add the bleeds on that. But for me, because I'm doing the full dust jacket, I'm just going to unfold the dust jacket. Hopefully you guys can see all of it, and I'm just going to measure the entire thing. What I'm going to do is just draw a little diagram on my piece of paper just so I can remember it. I'll try and have everything on the frame. 54 centimeters, and the height you only need to measure it once, which is good. Remain the same all the way, 23.5 centimeters. There you go. And I'm just going to measure each element so that I know roughly where to position my design once I create my canvas on Procreate. The little fold is about 9 centimeters. I'm just going to draw it roughly. I can write 9 centimeters here and 9 centimeters. And this section is about roughly, it doesn't have to be super accurate because I'm going to kind of keep it black wherever there's a fold, but it's about, I'd say, 15.5. And now the spine is roughly, I'm gonna say, what I'm gonna do is just add up those measurements. If I add 9 centimeters plus 9 centimeters plus 15.5 multiplied by 2, what remains is going to be the spine. So that's a total of 49. 54 minus 49 equals 5, and that's kind of like what's left in the middle for the spine, which is definitely a bit more. So what I can do is kind of round it up to 16 centimeters here, 16 centimeters, and I will have like a 4 centimeter spine. That would make more sense. Obviously this is approximative, and you guys will all have different measurements depending on what you're doing. All right, so now that I have my measurements, I'm just going to add the bleeds, because obviously you want to add a little bit of extra space on the edges of your design just in case. So here in this example, there's like a gold background, and if the artwork was just stopping here, chances are when it would have been cut, some white would show. So that's why they possibly added like a 3 or 5 millimeters bleed on the edges. So just a little bit extra gold so that when the machine was cutting, it would not have any white lines. So that's the reason why we include a bleed. So for the width, I'm going to add 5 millimeters on the left and 5 millimeters on the right. So 5 and 5 millimeters, that's 1 centimeter. So instead of 54 centimeters, I'm gonna create a canvas that's 55. And then for the height, same thing. Instead of having 23.5 centimeters, I'm going to add an extra centimeter for the bleed. So 5 millimeters at the top, 5 millimeters at the bottom. So that will give me a grand total of 24.5 centimeters for the height of my canvas. So that will be width and height. I think it really helps a lot to kind of have a little drawing like that. So feel free to do the same. You will have different measurements to mine, but if you want to practice, you can use exactly the same measurements as mine. Okay, so we can go ahead and create the new canvas. So clicking on the plus sign, I'm just going to click on that little box over there to create a custom canvas. In the dimensions, I'm obviously going to add my measurement that I just measured, and I'm gonna switch to centimeters and make sure you're not working with pixels. For the width, we ended up with 55 centimeters, and for the height we had 24.5. What you want to check here is that you have a 300 dpi for your resolution, and this should be the default resolution, so I don't need to change it. That is not giving me a lot of layers, so don't forget to take that into account. Every iPad is going to be different as well, so you might end up with a different number of layers. Now for the color profile, as I mentioned earlier, we want to work in the format that we're going to end up using if possible. So most of the time you will need to work in CMYK, and that will be the recommendation, to work in CMYK, but it will create something that's kind of dull and it won't have very vibrant colors. Therefore, I personally like to work in RGB because I know that most of the time the book covers that I'm creating are going to end up being viewed online a lot. On anything like Goodreads or Amazon, people are going to see the cover digitally. So I don't mind working on the cover as RGB for that reason, but you have to keep in mind that some colors will not appear the same once it's printed. So if you decide to go that route, keep that in mind. Like, don't go for a very super vibrant fluoro green because that's not going to work. But if you work in CMYK, you won't have that problem at all because you will be working in CMYK from the beginning. The way I convert to CMYK is I just open my document in Photoshop and then click image CMYK. Like that's all you have to do. Like, people often ask me like, how do you convert? Like, literally you just change the color mode to CMYK and you will see that it will look different, but then you can adjust it. I find that it works for me. Now, just to give you a quick example, when I did the cover for Midnight at the Houdini, I worked in CMYK all the way through because I knew that the client really needed something CMYK and they needed to know what it was going to look like as a CMYK once printed. Just ask your client, ask your printer what they're gonna need and go from there. That's all you need to do, and I can go ahead and click done. And that's my canvas, and it should be the same size as my dust jacket here. So all I have to do now is place my design in it. Now, one of the, I'd say, disadvantage of Procreate is that you don't have an option to kind of measure boxes and kind of put them in there and create guides, unlike Photoshop or InDesign, for example. So this is where you could use an app like Affinity or Illustrator to kind of create the guides and create boxes literally that are like 9 centimeters and then 15.5 and then create the spine. So you know exactly where to position things. What you can do as well is just create another canvas that you just copy and paste. So let me just show you one example of how I would do it. I would just create a new canvas, but this time with the measurements without the bleed. So instead of 55, I would just go 54 centimeters and 23.5 for the height, and that will give me the final cut size. So I can just click done. I can maybe fill that with some black, and then I can just copy that layer, and then I'm just going to paste that into that very first canvas that I created. And you'll see that if you've done things correctly, you should have this extra space, which is going to be your bleed. And that's looking good. So I'm just going to create like a new layer that you can rename guide. I'm just going to just draw my guides on the sides like that. and I can delete this layer, and you should have your guide like this. And I'm just going to do the same pretty much for the folds and the covers, and then I will have an empty space in the middle, which is going to be my spine. And there we have it, our beautiful template for our cover. Now you can go ahead and add your own design into it. So make sure you keep your guide on separate layer. I would recommend keeping them in there while you design, so it's just easier to see what you're doing. Don't forget that this is going to be the back. So this is the fold at the back. This is going to be the back cover. Your spine is going to be in the middle, and this is the front cover. So don't make this mistake of designing the front here. And this is going to be the front fold. Your spine, you can either position it like this or like this. This is all personal preference, and it also depends on your country. Make sure you just look at a book on your bookshelf and just do the same. In this case, we have the spine going like this. So I will probably stick to that. Okay, so this is what it would look like with a design in it. I have pasted the cover here, the spine and the back cover. I haven't put anything on the folds, but I don't think I really need anything. Now, this is when you can export it. If you're happy with the result, you can export a file and print it. So depending on your printer, like I said, you might need RGB, CMYK, you might need the bleed, you might not even need them. The best is to just ask your printer. Now, if you're working with a publisher like Random House, they will ask you for the layered file. So you would have to give them a file with every single layer. If possible, you could open that with Photoshop. So you could give them the PSD file and they can open it and kind of adjust it if needed. The best is always to talk to your client beforehand so they can tell you exactly what they're going to be needing and what you need to provide them with. Now, for me, for this personal project of mine, I can just export it as a PDF, and what I would do is just hide the guides, obviously, because I don't need to print them, and I would just go share as a PDF, and that will be all done. You could also export it as a TIFF or a JPEG. That could also work if you're printing it at home on your home printer. A JPEG is totally fine, and that's pretty much all you need to do for a book cover. Like, literally, it's that simple. My advice is to do some test prints. So don't just think that the first print is going to be good. You might print the cover for yourself and realize actually the spine could be a little bit thinner or a little bit thicker depending on how you fold it. Depending on the paper as well, the fold will be different. Like if your paper is like super thin, then it might be okay. But then if the paper is a bit thicker, it might need that you need to move things out a little bit. Again, it's all about trial and error and making sure you're asking your client first so you know exactly what they need. Now, if your goal is to design book covers for clients and make a living from it, then I think you don't necessarily need a design degree. You don't need to do any outreach, but what you need to do is to share your work. People need to see what you can do. Now, is having a design degree going to be useful? Absolutely. Like, you will be able to learn the skills. Now, do you need it? Probably not. Like, I've been doing graphic design for 15 years now, and nobody ever asked to see my graphic design degree. But what they wanted to see was the work I was capable of doing. And now you can learn absolutely any skill online, so you don't really need a design degree. And I have been teaching graphic design at university for 10 years also as a part-time job. So I'm not against university, don't get me wrong. I think it's very useful, but do you absolutely need it? No. So if your goal is to design book covers, you have the skills, then you can start designing book covers. And I think the best way to get clients and to break into the book cover design industry is to just show what you can do. People need to be able to see what they're going to get from you. They will connect with your own style, with what you can do, and they will reach out. Now, I think also the best is to start before you think you're actually ready to design book covers, because you will get asked by smaller clients to maybe do a book cover for them. It might be a very small job, but that will teach you a lot. And I think the sooner you start sharing, the sooner you'll get requests for smaller projects. And that's how you're going to learn the best, trust me. And I know it is scary to put your work out there. I know it's scary to do your first project. But if you're upfront about it with your client and say to them, look, it's one of my first commercial projects, I'm learning, and that's why my price is a bit lower, then it's totally fine. And the more you're going to do that, the more projects you'll be working on, the better you'll get, and the more you'll be able to increase your prices. And I also got this question when I put up a story the other day. Someone was asking if it was still a profitable industry, and I would say yes, because like I said, I get design requests for book covers, I would say probably like twice a week, which is insane. And that's been going on for the last 3 years. And I obviously don't say yes to all of them because my fee is quite high because I'm so busy. So whenever I say yes to a project, it's for a quite high fee. So yeah, it is definitely profitable. And I think it's not oversaturated because people want something that is unique, something that is handmade, something that is made by a real person. And I think with all of those like AI designs out there, people are going to crave something more authentic, something more real, more human, way more. So don't be afraid to share what you can do with your own style, with your own personality to it. I think that's really what is going to connect with people. And I think that's why I get so many requests, because my style is very different from what's out there. And I think that's the reason why people connect with it. So yeah, my advice is just to share your work, even if you're a little bit worried, trust me. Now, one way to not be worried about sharing your work is to be actually super confident about your skills. And one way to do that is to learn, obviously. And that's why I created the Whimsical Lettering Masterclass, where I teach you how to design a custom book cover with custom lettering, adding special effect, making sure you have all elements that work in a way that's super cohesive and that you can place at the front and the back cover, how to add text, how to make sure your lettering is easy to read and catches the viewer's attention. And I have put all of that into one masterclass where I go over the entire process from sketching onto your notebook to preparing the file for print, even creating mock-ups, making sure you learn everything about colors and setting up your files, all the stuff. So if you're interested, make sure you check out my Whimsical Lettering Masterclass, and also check out my other courses, because I have plenty of courses on lettering and design. And I also have a live lettering workshop coming up in about 2 weeks, so December 11th. And I will show you my entire process for drawing letters, adding embellishments, and then final effects. And you will learn the entire process. The way I teach is so that you can reuse it for any project. So everything I teach you is not just so you can follow along, but more so that you can replicate all of the skills and reuse it in your own project with your own style, with your own touch. So make sure you check it out. Also, if you have any other questions, because I'm not sure I covered everything, but I tried to cover every question. But if you have more questions, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I could maybe work on a part 2 for this video. And like I said, maybe do like a vector tutorial. That could be nice. But yeah, let me know. And yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed this video, that it gave you the motivation to either design your own book cover for yourself or to start designing book covers for clients. And that's it. I really hope you enjoyed this video, that it was helpful. And if you're working on a book cover, good luck. Share it with me. I would love to see it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So today we had Parker as a guest.